Am I on? Hello, boys and girls. Sorry for the delay in the beginning there. There was some sort of a technical issue where something was loading and then it wouldn't load. If you have any questions to ask and you're watching on the Google Hangout, then just use the Q&A app. Somebody has written, testing. Sorry if this appears, never tried this before. Yes, it's appearing. Check, check, check indeed. Also, if you're watching this on, not on Google Plus or whatever it is, but on YouTube, I'm going to keep reloading the page there. So if you have a question or a comment, just post it there and I'll try and get around to everybody. If you would like to join me on the call, that's fine. Let me know, and you can either email me or you can just say, I want to be on the call. But you need to be aware that if you do come on the call, it's public, obviously. People can see your face, and then once the Google Hangout is finished, it then uploads itself to YouTube, and then it's there forever. So be aware of that. And obviously, if you do come on the call, check all your gear first, check that your speakers and your mic is working, and that you've got all your thoughts in order so that you can express yourself as clear as you can. Okay, the theme for today is talking about the core values of the Spartan Life Coach project, which I really don't talk about enough, and it's starting to show. It's starting to show that I'm not talking about it enough because different people are jumping on board with this project, which is great, at different times in the story, at different points in the narrative, and a lot of people are trying to apply normal, standard ideals of modern mental health to what I'm doing with the Spartan Life Coach, because I'm talking about stuff like cluster B personality disorders, psychotherapy, and those kinds of issues. And there's a clash. It doesn't really work. It doesn't really fit. Excuse me. Of course, my throat has been absolutely fine all day, and then I get 2 minutes into doing a Google Hangout live on air, and it starts to close up. So first of all, the ideals of the Spartan Life Coach were in the beginning to not just, as opposed to standard mental health, was not just to see clients as people with diseases of the mind to be cured by a doctor of the mind. You know, so the idea that you have the same modern Western medical model, which is you have a disease of the mind or a disease of the emotions, and the doctor's going to come along and he's going to heal you of that disease. That model never really worked for me. I think that model is always going to be doomed to get very poor results. It's going to get very, very weak results. The Spartan Life Coach really was an attempt on my part to embrace the idea that we don't just seek to attack that which is wrong. We don't just attack the dis-ease. And I'm not just making broad sweeping criticisms of modern Western medicine. It's awesome. I fucking love it. And if I ever got into an accident and had my arm ripped off, I wouldn't be screaming for an aromatherapist. I would be looking for a surgeon and some really strong anesthetics, quick. But what we tend to do as human beings is we take one thing that works over here and we go, that's really cool. That toy is an awesome toy. This tool is an awesome tool. Let's apply it to everything. And I remember when I was at university and I was studying psychology, I chose to study something called systems thinking. Systems thinking looks at breaking down the world and looking at it through the lens of operating systems, into linking operating systems. And a great systems thinking philosopher, whose name I can't remember right now, Soz, said that one of the things that we have a tendency to do in the West, because it's worked for us, is to be deconstructive. We deconstruct things. So if you ever look at a blueprint of how a car engine works, modern Western mechanics will show you the way, will show you a car, and then it will show you the car all broken down in all of its pieces. You get a piece of Lego and you get the instructions, they'll show you the Lego constructed, and then they'll show it broken down into all its pieces. You get a piece of IKEA furniture, they show it constructed, and then you see it broken down into all of its pieces. Why? Because it works sometimes. When it comes to mental health, just knowing what's wrong in the system and just knowing how the parts hold together is not enough. They're also, And that's a very broad, sweeping statement that I just made, and it's kind of vague, and I need to specify what I mean by that. I also need to say that for all of us, I don't teach on this channel, physical health. It's not a physical health and channel per se. I'm not teaching diet and exercise and all the rest of it, but it is something I'm very interested in myself. And having seen people in my family unit and in my friends pass away at a young age, I am intimately, I have been intimately kind of exposed to the way the modern Western method handles physical problems as well. And it really is just about looking at what went wrong in the body and then attacking it, killing what is wrong in you. And I'm not all doctors are like this, not all hospitals are like this, not all institutions are like this, but there was not just little emphasis, there was effing zero emphasis on making the patient more healthy. There was only an interest in how do we kill the disease? How do we make them not unhealthy? How do we make the patient not unhealthy but totally abandon the idea of making them healthier? Don't give the patient or give the patient barely any means by which to make themselves healthier and stronger so that the body can naturally fight whatever it is. No information, no guidance whatsoever. How do we laser or bleach or cut or sever that which is sick? And I'm exaggerating now to be provocative, to make a point in an argument. So as above, so below, as within, so without, as with the body, so it is in the mind. The problem with this, when you apply it to the mental health, is that it really doesn't work. The early days of psychotherapy and psychiatry that everybody's very embarrassed about involved actually literally thinking that the disease was in the body, and therefore if somebody was mentally ill and they were, say, whatever they called it in the day, hysteria, they suffered from psychosexual hysteria or whatever it was, they would attack the body. They would literally have torture instruments that they would use to attack the body, believing that the corruption, the vileness, the impurity of the mind was somewhere there in the body. There was even an institute in America, a psychiatric institute, as late as the 1950s, they were doing this, where the chief psychiatrist thought that mental illness existed in parts of the body, and he would literally cut out those parts of the body. I know I'm not having a go at America. Everybody thinks I'm an anti-American. I'm absolutely not. I'm actually very pro-American. That's point number one to make. Point number two, I really didn't know about this until I got this through Martin Scorsese, through watching the show Boardwalk Empire, where somebody gets sent to this hellish this hellish institution where the chief psychiatrist is taking out people's teeth, taking out their wounds, removing breasts, removing body parts, because he thinks that that's going to make them less sick. And I remember watching this on the TV show and thinking, okay, that's gross. That's too far. Like every TV show nowadays goes out of its way to shock. Loads of sexual scenes, loads of like really, really strong violent scenes, and they're all competing to be shocking. But that's ridiculous until I, get my laptop out, look on Google, and I'm like, holy fuck, that actually happened. This doctor, a guy who's taken the oath, was removing people's body parts because they had psychiatric problems, because he thought that that's where the psychiatric problem was. So this gives you a very extreme example of what happens when we take this perspective to its logical conclusion. People are like, why are you so fervent and passionate about some things? You're weird. You're making a fuss over nothing. You're being dramatic. Why, people say, why are you so passionate about refusing genetic determinism? And I'm like, well, because that's the roots of racism. Do you want to know who the big bad genetic determinists were in recent history? Do you want to look at the Balkans? Do you want to look at what happened in Germany? Do you want to look at what happened recently in Africa? Do you want to look at what happened in England, a few hundred years ago? What happened in Ireland? Is still happening in Ireland. A lot of that is a kind of weird, glued together philosophy of genetic determinism that says there is something impure in you because you are a what? Bosnian, because you are a Jew, because you are from Northern England because you are Welsh, because you are this, because you are that. That's genetic determinism. So when you guys are coming to me and you're going, well, don't you just think some people are born that way? I try to politely and calmly and objectively say, I resist that idea, but this is why I resist the idea. Because if you follow it through to its logical conclusion and you start going, well, you know, the easiest thing I can do is just take me as an example. White people from the northwest of England are all have psychopathic leanings. Well, what's next? Well, which actually has been asserted before, by the way. Those Americans might not be aware of this, but in British culture, where I'm from, we're called Scousers. It doesn't matter why, but what we're known for is being violent, criminal. Nobody that we don't work. We're all benefits cheats. We sire many children with many different partners and then don't look after them. We're like seen as criminal scumbags. Every joke about criminals in the UK will be, or lazy, jobless criminals will be about people from my area. Will be about Scousers. That's a kind of genetic determinism, and it's rooted in some very old racist ideas about Irish people, because we're all the descendants of the Irish. And you'll be thinking, well, there's no racist ideas against Irish people. Yes, they were actually seen as being a separate race. Some even called them the Iberican or Iberian man, and they believed. Anyway, I'm going on now, but these are the roots of these problems. So if you have like a very seemingly innocent idea, what about genetic determinism? Why can't a person just be born a narcissist? And I'm like, maybe they are. Maybe there is an element of truth to that, but let's look at what that means, that you're born that way. Let's look at what it means if something is genetically determined. What about epigenetics? What about the environment? What about the way in which the genes interact with the environment and do different things? And what are we not looking at? I'm always asking, what are we not looking at? You know, all Scousers are criminals. All Scousers are violent, dramatic. We're known for being very dramatic, borderlines, and psychopaths, and all the women are histrionic, and everybody here is sexually obsessed, right? So you go, well, what are you not looking at? What are you not cross-referencing against that? Are you cross-referencing education against that? Are you cross-referencing, you know, economic deprivation against that? You know, what is it that's really causing? If it's even true, what is it that's causing that? If I know a lot of Americans follow this, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders as well. I guess in New Zealand they would call people like us, like Scousers. In Australia they call them bogans. In America, I saw a film. Ben Affleck made a movie and directed a movie. It was his redemption, called The Town. That was about a town in Boston. I think it's called Charlestown, where they're all the sons and daughters of Irish immigrants, and it's known for extreme criminality. When I watched that film, I was like, okay, this is it. It's the same kind of thing. People being raised in very poor, very industrialized areas with very, very few options. And guess what? And they're in the parts of the country that are forgotten. They're pointless parts of the country. They don't, you know, there used to be a big shipping industry in Boston. There used to be a big shipping industry here in Birkenhead, where I'm from, and in Liverpool. It was the shipping center of the world. It was the center of the slave trade back in the day, because everything came through here. A lot of, you know, the idea of women and children first. You saw the film Titanic? Women and children first. Women and children first got on the boats. That comes from Birkenhead. It's called the Birkenhead Drill, and it's based on an incident that occurred on the HMS Birkenhead, where they spontaneously decided that the men should stay on the boat and drown if need be, and the women and children should go on the lifeboats, which was the right thing to do. So it's from here. That history, that culture, that's all forgotten now. Nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers that that's what this place was about. Since the shipping industry all died, it just became, you know, just about people being criminal scumbags and robbing post offices and wearing tracksuits and having babies and then not looking after them. So that's why I resist it. So I resist genetic determinism, and in the same way I resist the idea of the modern Western model as it applies to mental health. I think it's extremely destructive, and taken to its logical conclusion can be horrifying. Now, that story I told you about, the psychiatrist, the doctor taking out people's teeth, Boardwalk Empire, I think, is set in the 1920s, but he was actually doing that in the 50s. He did it in the 50s. John F. Kennedy's had a sister called Rose, who, reading in between the lines, it sounds like she had some learning difficulties, but within that very strict Roman Catholic family, the Kennedys, that was extremely ambitious, she was also very naughty and very willful and stubborn and would not submit to the group discourse of the Kennedy family. So they took her to a psychiatrist and said, what are we going to do with her? And he said, well, we have a new process now. It's called a lobotomy. And what we do is we open the brain and we make a tiny incision. And they said to her, you know, Rose, you've got to stop, or else we're going to have you sorted out by this doctor. And so they cut open her head and they gouged around inside and they gave her a lobotomy, and they went too far. They cut away too much. And they reduced her to the mental age of a 5-year-old. She couldn't then, thereafter, for the rest of her life, she couldn't go to the bathroom on her own. She would just soil herself. That happened to a very wealthy white family who had a lot of options, and that happened to her because she wouldn't behave. They literally cut out a piece of her brain and turned her into a zombie. And that's the 60s. That's not that long ago. So taking this stuff to us, I'm giving you horrendous examples. I know I am. I'm sure you've seen films like there was a film about the Marquis de Sade, where they showed what used to happen in asylums. It's even been the subject of horror movies, electroshock therapy as an idea. Recently, I was watching Penny Dreadful, and one of the main characters, Miss Ives, is seen to have gone into a psychosexual hysteria, so they take her to one of these asylums. And it's torture. They would dunk people in ice cold water. They would run electric shocks through their head. They would knock holes in their skull. They'd drill into the skull. Trepanning, it's called. You know, this is the kind of things that like Native Americans would do as a form of. And some people say it helps. Some people like, actually it helps. The demons come out because the demons are in your head. So you knock a hole in the head, and then the demons can leak out. Oh, you think that's crazy, but that's what happens. A lot of people think that's what's going on. I don't believe that that's what's going on, but I think that somebody can act like they're possessed and be in a terrible, the worst examples of what you can think of for people with mental health issues, you know, swinging from the ceiling, screaming, naked, tearing their own skin off and all the rest of it, just through intense amounts of emotional dysregulation, because you are producing, and they're strong. The chemicals the body produces are not nothing. This is one of the things that bothers me. Like the way we talk about external drugs is they're really powerful, but internal drugs, nobody really talks about that. Well, all the external drugs you can think of, they're only a mirror for what your body is producing anyway. We're not that smart. We can only go, oh, your brain produces opiates. Okay, we'll produce it. Exogenous, I can't remember how you say it, but external opiates. That's what they're doing. I do believe that through intense trauma and emotional dysregulation, that the worst of the worst can occur. The only time where that's not the case is where there is actually something that is either the result of a genetic mutation or some kind of a problem at birth, or a physical problem, or perhaps even a traumatic brain injury. Then, you know, that's beyond the realm of psychotherapy, and it needs to be handled in a medical way, because it's a physical problem. But the vast majority of mental health issues are not physical problems. It's a psychological and emotional problem. Obviously, I don't want to bang this drum anymore, but that's why you have the drugs, huge amounts of drugs, and it's big money. It's big money. I have people contacting me all the time telling me that, you know, they had a bad breakup and they got upset and now they're on drugs. The doctors just give them drugs. You go, there you go. Here's some, you know, drugs that affect your emotions, your biology, and your mind and your consciousness. And when you actually read the side effects of things like antidepressants, SSRIs, what's one of the side effects of potential side effects of SSRIs? Massive depression. So what? You're going to give somebody a drug that might make them, who's depressed, then give them a drug that's going to make them even more depressed. So the other end of the spectrum was the Spartan life coach. Yes, there's been a couple of films recently. One of them had Miss Ives in it. The more recent one wasn't very good. Then there was the earlier one with Gerard Butler. It was a bit silly, but it was fun. So the idea of Spartanness was in the group consciousness. I read the book Pillars of Fire, which is not a great piece of history, but it's a really good historical context novel, which I highly recommend. Or was it Gates of Fire? Can't remember. Go and Google it. And it's about the 300, the Spartans. So there's the idea of that, the idea of being Spartan, of being a warrior, that I thought was cool. But more than that is the old English use of the word Spartan, the way we don't use it anymore, but the way we used to use it for a time. If you said that somebody had a Spartan lifestyle or a Spartan attitude, it meant that they lived a very simple life, that they had, that they were brave, that they were resistant to pain, they were self-disciplined, and they didn't need much to live, like the actual historical Spartans from ancient Sparta. And that was more of where I wanted to take this, and what I want to kind of remind people of. The Spartan Life Coach Project, when you're working with me, whether you just watch the videos or you get coaching with me or you buy the products or not, and you're trying to make this stuff work, there is a kind of magic element to it, which is the attitude of self-discipline and the attitude of bravery. I need you to be willing to push outside of your comfort zone. And I need you, like me, to value more than anything else consistent action taken over time. There are things that you must decide to do in any field of life, in any endeavor. It could be business, it could be relationships, it could be your health, it could be whatever, right? Your healing, your recovery, where you say, I am going to do this thing again and again and again. That's what training is. That's what the word conditioning means. And I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it every day. And I'm going to do it whether I feel like doing it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it whether I'm in a good mood, a bad mood, an indifferent mood, or whatever. That's the discipline. The idea that this stuff takes work and it's on you, independent, sovereign. The Spartans were an independent, sovereign state, despite the huge amount of political pressure they were by the rest of Greece to join up with the rest of Greece. They didn't. They remained sovereign. Now, I'm not going to laud it as something that was an absolute ideal. These people were savages. The Spartans were really cruel and they kept slaves. So, they're not like, you got to keep all this stuff in context. It's an idea. I'm moving you towards a certain set of ideals. I'm going to wrap it up and then I'm going to take people's questions. The biggest single ideal of the Spartan Life Coach that opposes the modern mental health ideology is as follows. The modern mental health ideology is that you have something wrong with you and that daddy can fix it. Whether it's stern granddaddy Freud, whether it's stern patriarchal authority figure who designed the pharmaceutical solution that you pop in inside your mouth, or whoever, that some big boss is going to fix it for you. It's a disgusting lie and a complete fantasy that will break your heart in the end if you follow it. You have to challenge that. You have to question that. Now, here's the tricky thing. I'm not saying never submit to authority. That's bad as well. Blindly submitting to authority, bad. Never submitting to authority, also bad. Well, when is it good to submit to authority? Well, I'm asking you right now to submit to my authority. If you refuse everything I'm saying, you're not submitting to any authority. Some people don't like the word authority. Some people don't like the word submit. I don't care if you don't like the word submit or authority. You have to do it. I got trained today to do strength training. I have to submit to the authority of the guy who's teaching me how to do a back squat. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? What's the point? I'm wasting his time and I'm wasting mine. I got him because I think he's better than me at what it needs to be done. And I think he can teach me how to do something I want to do. So I submit to that authority. What I don't do is go on Google and listen to every jackass online who's trying to talk about whatever it is that you're trying to learn how to do. It's very easy to have an opinion. And nowadays it's cheap to get an opinion out there. You don't need any money at all. You just set up a blog, set up a YouTube channel and do this. Blah, there you go. That's cheap. It's easy. It doesn't make it valid. So I want you to start thinking in terms of opposing the idea of being a passive consumer. I want you to start thinking of yourself as being an active creator. So you do what I do. All the stuff on this channel that you guys like or that has worked for you, has only happened because I said, fuck it, I'm not going to be a passive consumer anymore. I'm going to become an active creator. And my stuff is goofy. And sometimes it's awkward. And sometimes it doesn't quite fit. All the ideals and the concepts and the metaphors I give you, they don't fit together. But they work. They work in their own clunky way. But I would like it if people could take that stuff that they've seen that works and then run with the ball and create something else. Nowadays, we're not encouraged to be critical thinkers. We're not encouraged to be creators, to be engineers, to be the people who are the solutions givers, the solutions makers. We're encouraged to come along and say, I don't want you to do that, ladies and gents. I want you to think of doing it yourself. So get out of being a passive consumer. It's very tempting to get zoned out and to numb out and to just be like, okay, they'll just fix it for me. I'll just get it and just take it. I want you to start thinking of, well, how can I fix this? How can I make this work? How can I make sure that I'm getting better? Every technique that I give you, if you have the dogged determination and ferocity of intent to make it work or die trying, that's my attitude, is I'll make this work or I'll die trying. That's my personal, that's the way I do things. And I do get a lot of things done that way because I'm just like, I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know there's something wrong with me. I'm completely unreasonable when it comes to getting things done in a useful way. I'm just like, I'm not going to stop doing this. I can only fail if I give up. Over a long enough timeline, if I keep at this, I will get some kind of result. And it's that attitude that allows me to talk to you now, because I just was unreasonable. I just said I'm not gonna stop trying until I break through that to the other side. So I hope that makes sense. The reason I bring this up is because I've seen a few comments recently that's like, you're talking about mental health, but you don't acknowledge mainstream mental health, or you seem dismissive of it. I'm not completely dismissive of mainstream mental health. And I don't think it's all one big conspiracy by the Illuminati to push a big pharma products on everybody. But I do think that's a big part of the agenda and part of the issue. I'll finish by saying this. Somebody asked me about cognitive behavioral therapy. They said, why do you recommend NLP instead of cognitive behavioral therapy when there's a lot more research to back the efficacy of cognitive behavioral therapy? And I said, actually, there's just more research on CBT and there's very little on NLP. And when they have done research on NLP, they focused on the absolute worst elements of it that were guaranteed to fail. Things like eye accessing cues, as the NLP model gives it to you. Oh, I'm looking up and to the left. That means I'm lying. I'm looking up and to the right. That means it's bullshit. I don't know why they ever said that, and I don't know why they still teach it. They need to get rid of it. But there just isn't the number of studies done on NLP that there's done on CBT. Why? I'll give you the answer in a minute. But just think, why would that be the case? Why would there be so many studies about the effectiveness of CBT? So that's one major issue. And the other major issue is that actually, if you read the studies, they're not very strongly supportive of CBT functioning anyway. When we do studies and experiments in psychology, it's not like doing it in biology or doing it in chemistry. It's, we usually, what we do is we say we wanted to test the brilliance of CBT. We would, run a CBT protocol for 10 weeks on groups of people and then have them self-assess how much better they got. And generally speaking, the results for CBT are not strong. It's actually not a great way of handling the most common psychological problems, which are what? The most common psychological problems are anxiety and depression. But the model by which CBT attacks anxiety and depression is naive. So I don't want to turn this into a CBT bashing session. I got therapy from a CBT specialist back in 2009, and it was excellent. A woman called Nicola Forshaw. She also offers life coaching. If you can find her and get a hold of her, she's really, really good. And she teaches CBT to CBT practitioners. And she helped me. I did 3 or 4 sessions with her, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely wonderful. But that's because I believe that she's a great therapist. She's a great coach. CBT itself is quite naive. It assumes that the client wants to get better and will follow your advice. And it's basically just like advanced common sense. So when I had personal interaction with CBT, it was because I was delivering workshops for the probation service to criminals who were criminals because they were drug addicts. And we would say to them things like, when you think about taking heroin, imagine the consequences of taking heroin and then take it less. And I would have to say that to like criminals who were drug addicts with a straight face. And it's like, well, if that advice was going to work, they wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. It's like, it's naive. It's usually very, very naive. That's one of my problems with it. But the third thing I wanted to say, and it's to give you, I'm not bashing CBT, but it's to give you a context for the politics and the economics of what goes on in the mental health industry. CBT is very easy to teach, and it's cheap to teach of all the options. It's also the most CYA system. CYA is a little American acronym that I find useful. It stands for cover your ass. CBT is not risky. CBT will not re-traumatize people. It's the one thing you can use that means that clients are the least likely to sue you. You know, if you do, say, regression therapy, hypnosis, and that client goes back into trauma, and then they go home and they're in an emotional flashback and they do something terrible, they could sue you for that. Well, you don't touch that with CBT. So it's cheap to teach. It's cheap to train CBT practitioners up. It's very CYA. And the other thing with it is that it doesn't really challenge it fits hand in glove with the modern Western approach. It doesn't challenge anything, which is great for the system, but isn't very good for the client. So when you read the thing saying CBT is awesome and it's effective and this is why, even the studies that prove it, and not all of them do, some of them say it's actually not very good. It's no better than this, or it's no better than that, or, you know, 50% of cases, you know, they went into a relapse inside of 6 months after CBT. It only works as well as talking to somebody about their feelings and then listening to them can work. And there's nothing really much more to it than that, other than bits and pieces of advice that are given that will be very, very common sense and very, very straightforward. Okay, I've gone enough. I will now go and read the questions. I'm going to read the ones on the Google Hangout page first. Fee Wolf, F.E. Wolf, I think you used to have another name, sir, but you've changed it for a reason, so I won't say your other name. I recognize your icon. So are you saying that part of the issue is they are not treating the whole person, just the issue? Absolutely. This is part of the reductionist, deconstructionist approach, which says, okay, here's the problem. Say it's anxiety. Okay, you feel anxious. A part of your brain has anxiety-itis. Let's, you know, seal that bit off and just treat that. And I had a breakthrough when I was 25 about anxiety. I was a nightclub doorman at the time. That was my profession. I'd worked in the probation service and I'd hated it. And I had loads of problems, like my own personal problems, whatever. CPTSD. I didn't know it was that, but that's what I had at the time. So I went to foreign countries and I would go and stand on doors of nightclubs, wait for a fight to start, and then I would punch the fuck out of people and feel justified about it afterwards. Because I was legally, morally, ethically, they were in the wrong and I was in the right. So that was okay, I thought. But at that time, I was observing people. And also I had my own group of friends who I'd be interacting with all the time. And I became known as that weird guy who would talk about psychology. And people would come to me with anxiety. People who are living as workers in an environment in a holiday resort type of scenario. So everything is unreal. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol, and it's a very promiscuous. There's drugs, alcohol, sex, and people just going to a country just for 2 weeks out of 1 year to spend money they don't really have to get shit-faced and try and forget how awful their life is. There's a lot of violence there. There's all kinds of gangland activity there. You know, the year before, the door that I'd worked on, they were telling me that the year before, somebody had their head cut off in the club with a wakizashi, which is, you think of a samurai sword. It's like a short samurai sword. Somebody had walked up and got that. I was like, that's nice. I hope that doesn't happen to me. That would be a disappointing outcome. So it was that kind of an environment. It's a crazy environment. And I spoke to people who had anxiety, and I managed to figure out like a very rapid anxiety cure in the moment. Say if somebody had taken too much drugs or they had drunk too much and they were going into an emotional flashback. I didn't know that that's what it was, but I was like, oh, I would just say, I'd verbalize it differently. I'd be like, oh, they're freaking out. I had a degree in psychology and I'd experienced CBT and I was a master practitioner of NLP, but I just didn't know about the stuff that I talk about on this channel. I wish I did at the time. Life would have been way easier. And there was two things I noticed with anxiety. One is in the moment when an anxiety attack is hitting, they are, for want of a better metaphor, looking at demons. They're almost like, it's almost a religious experience. They're under demonic attack. The mind is attacking itself, but it's not real. The demons aren't real. They're seeing ghosts, not literally, metaphysically. They're seeing ghosts. Their brain is telling them something is wrong, something is wrong, something is wrong. Oh fuck, 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 oh fuck. And the body, the lower parts of the body experiences that as death. I'm going to die because I'm in an emotional flashback or I'm high on drugs or whatever it was. So what I would do as a doorman, as a security guard, is I'd take them to a corner. I'd take them away from the music and the people and the sound, which is all low-level threat, by the way. Nightclubs are trauma. The dark, the strobe lights, the people, strangers you don't know, jumping around and the faces coming towards you, it's trauma. It's a traumatic experience. It's not, we took a caveman or a cave woman and dragged them through a nightclub, they'd be twitching afterwards. You know, it's not, you're not supposed to experience that. But we've learned to experience that as fun. It's adrenalizing, it's sexy, it's dangerous, it's fun. So what I would do is I'd take them off and I'd make them face a wall. And I'd say, can you see the wall? And they go, yeah, I can see the wall. Can you breathe for me? Yeah, I can breathe. Okay, so just look at the wall. Just take a deep breath in. Instead of thinking about what you're thinking about, I want you to think about this wall. And I knew enough about NLP to model them. So I go, come over here quickly. Blah, blah, blah. I'd be up here with my voice and my tone, just like them, anxious. Come on, quickly. There's this thing I'm going to do with you, and it works really fast. Come over here now. And then I would slowly bring my tone. It's very simple. It's called mirroring and pacing. So you mirror their state, which is very anxious, and then you pace them. So you bring them down. And I would get them back into the moment. It was like the Zen meditation stuff I'd learned in martial arts when I was a kid. I'd get them to look at the wall and breathe and get back in the moment. Can you feel your feet? Can you feel your hands? Can you feel your breath in your body? Can you see the wall that is in front of you? The wall in front of you is real. The breath is real. The sound of my voice is real. Your feet are real. Your hands are real. Your feet are real, aren't they? And they go hee hee and laugh. And then the spell's broken. That was the first revelation I had about anxiety is, hey, you can cure that in the moment because you do the opposite of what the problem is. The problem is they're jumping out of the moment doing something else. So you pull them back into the moment with a bit of hand zen, a bit of foot zen, and a bit of wall zen, and a bit of breathing zen, and NLP them down into a calmer state. And the second thing came from systems thinking. I was like, anxiety, what is that? It's like a desire to run. It's like a desire to move. It's like a threat signal. What are you threatened by? When does anxiety start showing up? And I noticed that there was a correlation between anxiety showing up for some people in their lives and the death of somebody in their family or in their friend unit. And it's like the unconscious mind kind of understood, oh shit, we're mortal. When I'm mortal, I might die. Look at my life. I remember one person, I'm 28 years old. I still live at home with my mum. My room is too small. My mum, she wants to help me and I want her to help me, but at the same time, I know she's destabilizing me. So the unconscious mind is going, oh, fuck, we're not moving forward. We're not going anywhere. We're not thriving. We're not growing. And I'm 28 now. I'm living in my mum's spare room. I could be 38 and doing exactly this. And then the anxiety comes. So it was a little bit of NLP, a little bit of like Zen psychotherapy. Thich Nhat Hanh style stuff where you bring the mindfulness to psychotherapy, where you don't assume the signal is wrong. I don't assume the signal is wrong. I assume the signal has something to say. I assume the signal has a message. Like, why just turn off? Oh, you've got anxiety. Oh, you mustn't be anxious. Normal people aren't anxious. Take these drugs. It'll calm you right the fuck down. So, yes, Mr. Wolf. Whoa, everything has moved in my questions. Yeah, part of the issue is that they don't treat the whole situation. It's all context. Whenever somebody comes to me with anxiety, I blow up the system in my mind in the internal representations. I look at the person and I blow up the system that person is, and I go, money, health, house, career, progress, moving forward. Is this person moving forward? Have they had an experience like somebody who's around their age, or maybe like 5 to 10 years old, and has died suddenly? They realize they're mortal and they're not happy with the rate at which their life is moving forward. Humans are powered by progress. Our juice, our fuel is progress. If you don't progress, you'll be depressed. If you do progress, no matter how small the progression is, you feel good. Like if you can back squat more today than you could back squat yesterday, you feel good. You just get like a release of reward chemicals. It's dumb. I know it's dumb, but it still feels good, even though I know it's silly. So yes, the Western model tends to treat the issue rather than the whole person. And we don't just need to treat the whole person, we need to treat the whole situation. You know, what's your context? What is the context? If we're talking about PTSD amongst combat veterans, what's the context? Why, you know, why wouldn't you have PTSD? The more I look at it, the more I'm like, you're doomed to have, like most people are going to have PTSD. Even just your training for the military will give you PTSD. If you watch the that great film that was shot in the UK at Pinewood Studios down in Buckinghamshire, that's called Full Metal Jacket by Stanley Kubrick, and if you watch the first part of that film, it takes place in a Marine Corps barracks. It's their initiation. It kind of shows you how traumatic that the pressure of that initiation, that stamping press that's trying to make soldiers of people, and some people break. Of course they do. Like it's going to traumatize you. And if you are good, I would go one step further with this, because I know I've got more people with PTSD watching this channel now. If you were a good soldier, I would say the better you were as a soldier, the worse you're going to be as a civilian, because the two things are diametrically opposed in many ways. You know, I'm maybe exaggerating here a little bit, but the two things are diametric. The things that make a soldier good are the things that make a civilian a criminal. And that's why, you know, there's a TEDx talk by a young Marine who came back from, I've mentioned this before, came back from Afghanistan and went to, you know, he'd been clearing IEDs for a couple of months, went to a house party. Somebody did something, I think they waved a gun around at a house party, and he jumped on them and he beat the shit out of them, as he was trained to do. And the same government that trained him to do that and rewarded him for being a good little boy and a good soldier and well done, son, be aggressive, make contact with the enemy, you know, be direct, be aggressive, beat them to the ground, disarm the guy. The same government that rewarded him for that behavior, out of context, we're talking about context and mental health, punishes him for that behavior. And it's America, so you do heavy punishments, very heavy custodial sentences, and I think he's serving 10 years for it. Crazy. Okay, let me do, I'm already 45 minutes in and I to get through more questions here, but thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf has also said the book is Gates of Fire, not Pillars of Fire. Gates of Fire. Okay. I actually, oh, right. The old ones are at the bottom. So I'm scrolling to the bottom and I'm going up. Up. Well, this is awkward. I'm just sat here silently and you're looking at me going, are you going to say something? No, I'm going to sing a song. Okay, I will not vet this before I read it. I'll just read it out. I have great anxiety when I approach women. I long for their affection and love, but I think my overpowering mother, God, as I was reading that, it moved. God damn you. Sorry, I don't know how to use these Google Hangouts is so complicated. Don't move. How dare you, sir? Keep still. Oh, there we go. But I think my overpowering mother, who used to criticize me always and insult me, may have something to do with it. Yeah, I also think that your intuition is right on that one. Of course, I have porous ego boundaries and I'm overcoming that. Yeah. You know, if you've been, if there was heavy, intense trauma from your mum, obviously at a level 1, Pavlovian conditioning, you know, the first important woman in your life that you had a truly intimate relationship with was cruel to you. Now every woman after that is going to be a bit difficult for you. Obviously, I can sympathize with that. Can go a bit deeper than that. I'm not saying that she did, but some mothers, borderline mothers, are for doing this with their daughters more than with their sons. So if a woman is a classic for narcissistic borderline as a mother, she'll punish the daughter for demonstrating any self-assertiveness and for being sovereign and independent, because the mother experienced the personality disordered mother will experience that as an abandonment, as an insult. So she'll punish the child for being like moving forward, Even the simplest things like, Mummy, I'm going to go to the bottom of the garden on my own. I don't know why she suddenly became very English. Mummy, I'm going to the bottom of the garden on my own to explore. And then the mother will perceive that as like a threat and go into an emotional flashback and freak out and punish the child for it. The child will then associate fear and pain and sadness to exploring and to moving forward. What I'm saying right now sounds quite subtle, but I see this all the time, and it has a very powerfully negative effect on your ability to move forward and to help yourself. Similarly, your mother may, over the years, have brainwashed you subtly in ways that you can't really remember in a covert way. That being in any way assertive with women or friendly with women was wrong or shameful or disgusting, or you might have been culturally conditioned for that. Something happened. I was born in 1978 in the 80s. When I was in England, I moved to Portugal at a young age, but they got to me before the age of 8 in schools. Before the age of 8, adults told me that men shouldn't look at women because it's offensive. And they're redoing it now. They've got a big push in the UK right now, teaching men basically that all young men are rapists. So as a man, this is the assumption. Hello, young man, you're a rapist. Please don't rape anyone. I know you want to, but please don't be a rapist. I didn't get it as strongly as these fucking poor young boys are getting it now. They're being given consent courses, which to me is just insane. The idea that you would say to somebody, yeah, a woman has to consent to you having sex with her, otherwise it's called rape. Why aren't we all given murder courses? Why aren't we all given don't beat the shit out of your children courses? Then why is it only that one issue that gets focused on? But certainly culturally, for me in the 80s, before the age of 8, I was told that my natural drive towards women was wrong and was associated with a morally repellent crime that was called rape. So I had a complex equivalent running inside of my head of like, okay, if I show interest in a girl, I'm a criminal. It's criminal to do that. It's invasive. It's disrespectful of boundaries, and it was messy. So that can be influencing you as well. I'm not going to. Your name is here, by the way, in a public forum. I'm not going to say your name, but there's a lot to overcome. There's a lot of things that depending on your environment and your cultural conditioning, you need to overcome in order to get comfortable with women. Of course, you desire their affection. You're a human being. You're a mammal. And women desire your affection too. This is all very normal and natural. This is all, but it's weird. I had to like relearn that as an adult. Like it's normal. I was like, oh, it's normal and natural for people to just be attracted to it, because I've been so messed up with all the contradictory messages that had been fed to me and all the shaming and the guilting that had gone on. I was like, oh, some girls like it when I approach. Oh, right. Okay. Then I just need to work out when it's a good thing and then not do it when it's not a good thing. And then everybody's like a win-win negotiation going on. And then, you can develop a healthier approach. But yeah, it kind of sounds dumb. We have to relearn really, really simple things once that damage has been done. But yes, it sounds to me like there was some damage done there in your ability to relate to women and be vulnerable and be intimate with them, because you're exposing yourself. You're exposing the most intimate part of yourself and making yourself very vulnerable to a woman when you approach her. And it's it's fine. It's culturally accepted. It's part of culture for women to shame you for that. It's absolutely okay for a woman to completely humiliate you publicly if you approach her. There's nothing she will. There is no sanction that will be levied against her. Her friends won't be like, God, you're a dick. Don't be like that. Don't say that to that poor fucking guy. Well, if she has good friends, they will. But it's normal and accepted and even seen as cool. Like a girl can be seen as quite cool if she's very, very cruel and open in humiliating men who approach her. So yeah, I'm sorry it's that way, buddy, but you just have to kind of work your way around it. But I feel your pain, homie. I feel your pain, man. I'm sorry, these questions are jumping all over the place because I think more questions are coming through and it's pushing them down. Another one that I've just found. In line with the Goodwill Hunting question test to uncover a narcissist, is there a way to test if the potential love interest will be a CPTSD supportive ally? I think any normal, sane human being who has like a shred of compassion should be supportive, or like I would hope would be supportive if they realize that you have a problem that you're working through, and that problem is provoked by intimacy and is provoked by relationships. But you really need to learn to communicate that very effectively. I had a strange upbringing, and as much as I do have CPTSD and I was raised in very adverse childhood conditions, I was also raised in an environment where one of the abusive types was very keen on me being a good communicator and was very keen on me being a good speaker and a good salesperson and a good actor and good at getting ideas over and understanding psychology and all the rest of it. So even as I was getting like negative stuff, I also had positive stuff from the same person. Isn't it always the way? You know, they're never completely good or evil. There's always like a mix of things. And one of the things I can say, speaking to people with CPTSD and with PTSD, especially when you're in a flashback, your ability to communicate goes down. There's been research on this that showed that people with PTSD, they correlated PTSD symptoms with a diminished vocabulary, use of monosyllables, yes, no, ugh. You know, they're reducing back to grunts when they communicate. And the third thing was a lot of death metaphors. There's a huge number of death metaphors that come out of them. So when you're seeking to put your life back together and to recover, you must have, and this kind of dovetails with what we were just saying to the young gentleman who would like to be able to feel good about approaching women, is all of this is communication. You need to improve the communication with yourself. And in order to reach out and have contact with other human beings, you need to improve your communication with others. For people with CPTSD, this is quite difficult, or can be, because you can develop social awkwardness, you can become self-isolating, you can become eccentric and a bit weird in the way that you come across. I was just talking about this just recently to somebody that, like, my life changed in the December of 2013 when I did a couple of very, very simple things. But one of the biggest things that I did was I just started to look at myself objectively and ask, how am I coming across to other people? What am I saying about myself by the way I dress, by the way I talk, by the way I act? What reasonable response can I expect from that? And it was a very sobering experience. It was, you know, like to actually step back and go, wow, I am kind of coming across like a friendly, funny, but kind of eccentric, possibly violent, occasionally obnoxious guy. And it's too much. Like, people don't have time for that. You can't expect people to just deal with all that in one go. You know, it's too much. So work on your communication skills. But yeah, any normal human being should be compassionate to the idea that you have a problem, especially if it's a problem that's provoked by the intimacy of a relationship. So you can say to them, hey, sometimes I might get a bit needy. Sometimes I might get a bit anxious. I'm particularly sensitive to any kind of thing that could look like abandonment, and I can freak out. Don't freak out because I'm freaking out. You know, it's me. I'm dealing with it. It's okay. You know, and then do your best to try and deal with it. But yeah, you really need your partner to be an ally with that. The research that's been done for people who've been diagnosed as borderline has shown that when the partner is an ally in their process, they get better much more quickly. And lo and behold, again, here we find in PTSD, just normal PTSD, not complex PTSD, when the PTSD therapy was done with couples, it was found to be more effective than when just done alone. So Mr. Wolf before asked, is that because they're just dealing with the whole issue rather than they're dealing with just the issue rather than the whole person? And I said, yes, they're dealing with the issue. not the person. And they're also not looking at the environment and the context in which that person is. The spouse is part of that environment. You know, if you have PTSD, all the research indicates you'll give your partner PTSD. Why would it not be the same for CPTSD? You know, they look at like the husbands and wives of combat veterans, and they really struggle. The whole family unit can struggle. If the combat veteran has a strong PTSD, the whole family unit gets sick. Drinking goes up, gambling goes up, every coping mechanism goes up. And interestingly enough, men struggle with it. They cope less with PTSD in their spouse than women do. They are less able to cope with the PTSD of a spouse than women are. And I can attest to that. I've lived with somebody with straight up combat PTSD, and it's horrible. It's an awful experience. Very, very, very difficult. So it makes sense to me, the idea that people would go to therapy as a couple and, you know, sort out that sort of communication loop. So he must be an ally, really. You know, if you're looking at the potential guys, I'll just say your initials, SM, you really do. It's very sensible for you to vet to see if he would be an ally in that, and to just kind of, you know, but I can't give you a test. I can't, like, what's the one question you can ask a potential boyfriend to see if he would be an ally with my CPTSD? I would just raise the subject. Maybe don't use the technical terms. You know, just say, this is it. You know, I'm fixing it. It's totally going to be okay. And then just, you know, let them know. Put them in the loop. I think it's very important. This gentleman is back. I'm sorry, I did not include my question. Due to my CPTSD, I've never been able to make a move to kiss a woman because I would freeze. So I would lose the window of opportunity. What kind of mental exercise or program can I use in order to do it? Your brain is telling you that the problem is that you freeze when you try and kiss a girl, but that's not really what the problem is. And we have already been going for an hour, so I don't want to get into this one right now. Your brain is telling you the problem is, I always miss the opportunity to kiss the girl. And this is kind of a more of a masculine way of looking at the problem, like as though it was a car engine and going, here's the thing, dude, bro, you got to close the deal, bro. You're not closing the deal, bro. That's the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is that you don't feel good in the company of that girl. I'm not going to go into this too much, but the advice that I give guys, and have given guys for years, that they never take, is you need to resolve your relationship with women. You've got not a healthy relationship with you have a chip on your shoulder about women. I was saying this to a girl recently. She's got a chip on her shoulder with men. She's got a problem with men. It's like, you're always going to have, it's not men now that's the problem. It's your chip on your shoulder with men. So it's going to make you interact with them in a certain way. Let me give you all, boys and girls, a piece of advice here. You're giving away way more data than you think. You're giving off way more information than you think. You're unconsciously communicating your emotional state and your intent way more than you think, which is why if you've ever done coaching with me and I'll be like, did you ever, you'll be like, my God, he's psychic. I'm not psychic. You told me that in some way, or you nearly told me that in some way through your email, and you've got a blind spot and you forgot it, or you practically told me with your eyes, with your face, with your gestures when we started talking about the subject. So again, it's back to try and remember to get an objective look at yourself. You're going back to this gentleman's question, you're not comfortable being around women yet. That's the truth. You kind of need to, you need to forgive women. You got to do that. Like, if you're, this is the advice I would give to girls, women who have problems with men. Your mum was your first woman. She is, what was the line from The Crow? Mother is the name for God on the lips of children. The film The Crow with Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. Mother is the name for God on the lips of children. Your mum is your template for all women. If you're angry with mummy, you're angry with all mothers and all women. it sounds, and you'll be like, no, I'm not. Your ego is going to be like, no, I'm not. You are. You're mad at her, and you're scared of her, and you're still pissed off with her, and you kind of need. People are going to go crazy because I'm saying, you just said you should forgive the abuser. On some level, like, you don't have to completely forgive the actual person. This is psychotherapy, guys. A lot of this stuff is a bit occult and unseen and behind the veil and very symbolic. You don't need to literally forgive your mother, whatever her name is. Let's say she is called such and such. She is 57 years old. She lives at this address, and she banks with so and so, and she wears yellow socks. Right, that person you don't have to forgive, but the archetype for the mother that you carry inside of you, you got to forgive that. You've got to stop being angry with women. I had to go through this process. It changed my life. It's a huge thing, and it means when you do that, you lift a veil off your eyes, off your perception. You realize you're seeing women through a veil. The idea, like, for a while, I had no idea that I had any misogynistic tendencies. Then I lived as, I am a misogynist. Holy shit, I've been a covert misogynist my whole life. And then 6 months later, I was like, I was never a misogynist. That's just not true. But I had a lot of deep hang-ups about women that needs to be overcome. A lot of women have a lot of deep hang-ups about men that they overcome because of trauma that they've experienced with their fathers. It might not fit your self-image. You might not think it's cool. You might not think it's like what you want to hear. It's Freudian bullshit. There's nothing to it. But, well, boys and girls, I'm sorry, this is all I got for you on this one. Like, if you're freezing right before you kiss a girl, then we would call that an emotional flashback, which is a freeze. And the reason why you're freezing, why you would be going into an emotional flashback as you're getting closer and closer to a girl and you're about to kiss her, is because you're about to do something that reveals your intimate, vulnerable intent, which is sexual, right? And if she rejects you at that moment, it would be very, very painful because you're not armored. The armor's off. You're showing who you truly are, and you're terrified of that pain. And you could argue that you should be, but what is happening is that it's sending you into a freeze response at this point. It's not, don't be taking advice from PUA forums saying, yeah, bro, just close the deal. Just say this phrase and initiate Kino, bro. Don't you got to resolve. It's all internal. It's all internal. You got to resolve the issues. You've got to like women again. You got to learn to love women again. And when you do, everything will fall into place. You won't have this problem. It's not about whether you kiss her or not. Who cares? She doesn't care. Women, like, it's not as mechanical, black and white. We did this, we did that. Maybe instead of kissing her, you should be thinking about holding a hand. But imagine if you held a hand with emotional intensity, with meaning, and your entire focus and intent and consciousness was just the few inches of skin contact on her hand. How would that feel? You'd send an electric shock through the girl's whole body if your intent was focused, right? But your brain is going, no, you got to kiss her. You just like that's gonna just fucking fix everything. It isn't, dude. It isn't, because there's a lot of stuff you're supposed to do after that is way harder than just kissing, or not harder, as the case may be. When it comes to intimacy and vulnerability and CPTSD, the truth is, a lot of guys, they suffer from ED. You're bound to, because the intimacy is triggering a freeze response, which is helplessness, which is impotence. So you literally will be physically impotent. Nobody talks about it because it's embarrassing, but ED, erectile dysfunction, is a huge throbbing problem amongst guys with CPTSD. Of course it is. Of course we would struggle with that. It's performance within an intimate context where you're vulnerable. So it's going to be difficult. So the kissing part that your brain is telling you is so important. It ain't even a thing. You need to get comfortable initiating intimate contact with women. And that could be verbal, could be purely psychological, could be emotional, then it could be physical, but not in the way that you're describing it. It could be something else. And then, it's not as black and white as you're making it out. I kind of probably overhammered that point there. Okay, let's go. I've gone over time. Let's answer some more questions. Hey, LaRoche, you say, hello, Spartan Life Coach. Hello, A. LaRoche. It doesn't fix the environmental context influencing the mental state, and most therapists don't encourage people to become active in changing the larger issues affecting their quality of life. Yeah, you're right, LP. And that's why you have conspiracy theorists out there saying that the psychotherapeutic game is a shell game, and it's all part of a larger conspiracy, which tells you that if you see the things that are wrong in society and culture and you get depressed about it, then they're going to lock you up in the asylum and torture you. I don't actually necessarily agree with that, but I could see how sometimes it kind of looks a little bit like that. Why would you not want to talk about the larger context? Why do combat veterans with PTSD, why are they not encouraged to? Why is it that in Iraq and Afghanistan, more soldiers are killing themselves than are being killed in combat? Is it because they come home and feel shitty about what happened, about the war? Do they feel like it was pointless? Do they feel used? Do they feel absolutely fucking raped? Are they sad that the friends that they made died or lost limbs over there for no fucking reason whatsoever? Why are they committing more suicide from Iraq and Afghanistan than in any other war that we have on record? Why? What's the problem? Why can't we have that conversation? No, you can't have that conversation. You can't start talking about economics and politics and conspiracy theories, and it's just verboten, it's taboo. But you know how I say, like in a family unit, whatever the big no in the living room is, whatever hides behind the black curtains that must never be opened in the living room because it's just verboten. It's the same at the global family level and the national family level. Like, what's behind the big curtains that we're not supposed to talk about, that we're not supposed to look at? Is it that we're now the bad guys? Are we the Nazis of this era? I'm not saying we are. I'm just asking the question: are we the Nazis of this era? Are we the bad guys? Are we the people? Are people in history going to look back the way we look back at Germans in World War II and go, "Why did none of you do it? Why didn't you stop it? Why did none of you stop it?" As if nobody tried, where fucking tons of people did, and they all got executed for it. By the way, not everybody was down for what was going on in Germany in World War II. Will we look back on ourselves with that same level of moral condemnation on the high horse? Why am I not doing anything about it? I know it's wrong. I do nothing about it. Nothing at all. Nothing. I barely even mention it on the channel. I know it's wrong. I know we're engaging in illegal wars, but I do nothing about it. So there you go. You got me on record. In 200 years' time, people look at that and they go, "He knew. He did nothing. He was in a state of apathy and masochistic submission." I don't even know what the question was. I really should stop soon. I agree with your comments on authority. It's currently a big issue in the US, especially in light of Stanley Milgram's studies. Anyone questioning authority is being scrutinized for mental health issues. Any ideas on how to address this? I think you can go one step further. Isn't it the case now in America that patriots are called terrorists? How Orwellian is that? If you question authority, you have a mental health issue. If you are a patriot, didn't they say something like, if they catch you, quoting the Bill of Rights or flying the American flag, you go on a watch list? Or did I just get that from the Alex Jones channel? Maybe it's not true. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right with your comment there. I became aware that I had CPTSD a few months ago. I'm currently doing my recovery work myself. God bless you. With the aid of your first aid kit. Cool. Horosho, Tavarish, horosho. My question is, which part of my recovery should I focus on first? My codependency issues, inner critic work, or all of it? The inner critic is a big thing, because that's what stops you from putting your socks on in the morning. The codependency is a result of the inner critic to a degree. We could say that. Focus on, be a ninja of emotional flashbacks. Be a ninja of understanding your own emotional flashbacks. Be your own doctor. Be your own therapist. Be the expert on you and your emotional flashbacks. Be like, oh, here we go. You did this, which reminds me of what my dad used to do, and now I'm gonna. There we go. I'm now in fawn fight. Now here we are. We're in the middle of it. So your emotional flashbacks. Focus on your emotional flashbacks first and foremost. Reduce them. If you can't reduce them, at least become a ninja of observing them. And your inner critic. Deal with that inner critic. You got to get hold of Gollum. Was Gollum the goodie or the baddie? Smeagol was the goodie. Gollum was the baddie. Get hold of Gollum, the inner critic. You grab that scrawny little fucker by his throat. You're like, you're my cheerleader now. I own you. I own you. You're my cheerleader now. And you got to make him not say mean stuff to you anymore. That's hugely important. The codependency, the porous ego boundaries, they're kind of the symptoms of a very strong inner critic and of somebody who's in emotional flashback. They're not the cause. So stick with emotional flashbacks and the inner critic. That's my advice. I'm going to have to wrap this soon. Okay. I choked on the submit part. I think there's a huge difference between choosing to learn and submission. We're all captains of our own ship, and I don't think it's ever a good idea to give that power away. I knew somebody would say that. Personally, I think you're wrong. I think that a healthy human being must learn to submit to authority. And I used the word submit advisedly. I know it's provocative, but the reason why is I have trained with people. I have trained people as a trainer, martial arts, personal training, psychology, and I have trained alongside people where we were both learning from an educator. The people who refuse to submit to authority suck in the end. They suck. They really do. I mean, for me, I'm not going to get into a to and fro, but you're a sovereign adult. You think you hate the word submit, then cool. Be careful, because you only ever really get excellent results when you actually submit. I'm using the word advisedly to the authority. Say it's Muay Thai. You want to learn how to do Muay Thai. You get a guy who goes into a Muay Thai class who thinks he knows better than the teacher, and he's going to accept half of what the teacher says and the rest he's going to filter out. And then you get a guy who goes to a Muay Thai class, empty brain. He's like, I want to learn Muay Thai. I'm going to do whatever the teacher says. You will be better inside of 6 months if you just follow the instructions. And Muay Thai is a good example. It actually does require a very calm. You just submit to the process. You just you've got to knock out the reps. And the guys who don't do that, they suck after 6 months. But dude, you do what you like. You don't like the word submit. Good for you. Non-servium. Thanks, Richie. Makes sense. You gave me something to work on. You're answering from what? Cool. Still coming to grips with my own CPTSD and mental health. Awesome. Okay, we're getting to the last question here. Sorry for all the questions. I'm disabled and have been for 10 years. My entire left side is numb. Since my suppressed memories returned, I can feel my leg, but not fully. Could the numbness be due to suppressed feelings? Many thanks. I don't know. I don't know. It's outside of my scope of expertise. I know that in some situations that I've seen, the body can play out a metaphor for what's going on at the emotional and psychological level. So intent, I'll tell you what I have seen quite frequently is people who had a freeze response to trauma who got very depressed, and they would say, I suffer from depression. And I noticed when people were describing, they would say to me, I suffer from depression. They were actually using the same word, depression, to describe 5 different clusters of symptoms. I came up with the number 5 arbitrarily. Different clusters of symptoms. One of those clusters of symptoms was numbness of the limbs, a feeling of being out of the body, numb, tingly feeling, and heavy legs and arms. So that's my only experience with it. And yes, that was about locked feeling, unexpressed feeling that was locked, where they just couldn't process it, and they had a freeze response to trauma. That's probably about as much help as I can give you, because the rest it's outside of my field of expertise. I need to drink some nasty oils and eat vitamins to replenish my own system. Here's the glitch. I swing between fuck you, I can heal myself, and they go down kind of easy. But lately I see them and think and feel, ew, you assholes fucked me over good, and I run away. You were the same guy who said that you struggled with the word submission to authority. It's kind of the same thing. Maybe I should explain it like this. Say if you were going to go for, let's not talk about your vitamins and oils. Let's not talk about that, because I don't really know about that. But say you're going to choose a life coach, and you weren't going to choose me, but you're going to say, hey, Richie, I'm going to choose a life coach to teach me how to set up a business that I've wanted to set up for years, what I would say to you is go through a bunch of them, whittle it down to 10. You like their websites, you like their YouTube videos, whatever it is. Then of the 10, you go through and you email them and you do what they call in business your due diligence. You check them all out. If you can, Skype with them, talk to them over the phone. You can tell a lot by pacing and volume and voice tone and how they respond to questions and all the rest of it. This is how I chose a therapist back in 2009. And then pick one and go, you know what? I trust myself. I trust my intuition. That's the one. That's what I did. I said, this is the woman for me. She's going to sort. Of all the people I spoke to, this woman is not vague. She's very calm. She's not trying to sell anything to me. She's just like, yeah, I'm here. Get therapy if you want, or if you don't, then go and eat an ice cream. Whatever. She didn't say that, but that was more. She was very calm, very, very grounded, and I liked that. And I went with her, and I never regretted it. But I said to myself before I went, and this is after, as I said before, years being a martial arts instructor, I said to myself, don't fuck with the process. You trust her. You've decided that she's right. You've decided. Don't be ADHD and then change it and then try and like deconstruct it even as you're going. Obviously, if she'd done something crazy that proved that she was mad, I would have stopped. Don't jump from one solution to the next. Stick with something and see it through to the end. Otherwise, like if you're with the best will in the world, I'm pretty good, apparently, according to my clients. As a life coach, I'm pretty good, especially when it comes to the CPTSD. But with the best will in the world, if you questioned everything I said to you the entire time and you just didn't do what I told you to do, it wouldn't work. I've had clients like that. I've had clients where I tell them specifically, please, at this time of day, do this and say these words. Please. I remember a guy who was he'd been in the Marines. And I was like, okay, dude, imagine this is boot camp. This is what you're going to do. And the very next day, he did the opposite thing. And I was like, I can't. I told you to do this and you did that. And now there's big trouble. And I definitely didn't tell you to do that. Why would you? And then, there's nothing I can do. So you're really giving the solution giver nowhere to go. Like if they are good, imagine you had the best solution giver in the world for whatever your subject is. If you question everything they do and you do the opposite of what they tell you to do, it's still not going to work. I think that's my point. I'll leave it at that. I'm trying to help. You said oils, and if you've decided that the vitamins and the oils are right for you, then take them. Just stick with it. Take them. Consistency of action over time. If you don't think they're right for you, stop taking them. But, do or do not. Don't diminish your contribution. You are doing something simply by addressing the question, not sidestepping, skipping over it, or just agreeing with W/SQ. I don't know what that piece of shortening means. With agreeing, WSQ. Status quo with the status quo. I speak internet. Oh yeah. Hearing people address this openly helps others to understand. They can question and speak up. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Okie dokie. Somebody with a Portuguese flag. Please, can you help me with setting boundaries for myself and within my relationships? I'm not really sure how to start the process. I'm pretty sure that I'm codependent. Thank you very much in advance for any advice that you can give. Go over to Spartan Life Coach right now and get the self-assertiveness course. And that was a sales pitch. I think I just plugged one of my products. Yeah, go and get the self-assertiveness course. It would be easy. It's relatively cheap. It can change your life. If you can't afford it, the shortest piece of advice I can give you is to start learning to say no. Practice saying no. Like sit there right now and say no out loud, and then imagine somebody asking you to do something and you say no, and then imagine that you want to do something that you know is not good for you and you say no to yourself. Setting boundaries is not just about setting boundaries with others, it's about setting boundaries with yourself as well. So there's some advice. Hello, Richie. First of all, I want to thank you for helping me to heal from CPTSD. I think of you as my guardian angel. That's very sweet of you, sir. Thank you. Okay, non-servium. Damn right, Claire. By the way, the situation in Germany is getting worse. A German politician who is pro-refugees got stabbed in public. And people still tend not to call it what it is, fascist terror. It's fucked up. I'm Jewish and I don't feel safe anymore. Yeah. I'm going to opt to not comment on that one. I did wonder if anybody was going to ask me about the refugee situation. I will at some point, but I'm not going to do it right now. Yeah, the situation in Germany, of course, it's getting worse. I'm not going to comment on the Syrian situation. Watch Britain, it's coming. What you're saying in Germany now, you'll be saying in Britain within the next couple of weeks. It's just you can't just ask a populace to do this. You just can't. It's not. I said this 6 weeks ago when it all kicked off. You cannot ask an entire nation of people to do what they're doing. I can't believe the EU really is this incompetent. A part of me is going back into conspiracy theorist mode. I'm like, they must be trying to aggravate people. They must be trying to wind people up. And okay, I'll leave it, but let me just say, I hear you. I hear you. It isn't safe at the moment. Okay, last one. Thank you so much for mentioning the creator within us. You are truly an inspiration. Did I mention the creator within us? I love this kind of comment. People say to me that I say stuff and they go, when you said da, 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 and they'll say something really cool. And I'm like, I know that I didn't say that. I'm not that smart. But people attribute cool things to me. And I just, yeah, I totally said that. Thank you so much for mentioning the creator within us. I wish I had. Let's mention it now. You have a creator within you. Feed the creator. You are truly an inspiration. Thank you for being yourself and sharing your thoughts and emotions with us. Nightclubs are totally trauma. No surprise society wants us to celebrate weekly there. Yes, indeed. And who benefits from that? Cui bono, from us going to the nightclubs every weekend and spending lots of money on highly taxed alcohol. Okay, ladies and gents, I'm going to wrap it there. I'm sorry I didn't get around to the YouTube questions. We covered a lot of ground in this one. Got some really good questions and feedback. Thank you all for your time and your patience. I'll hopefully run a slightly longer one next time. So that's it from me, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Cheers.